generations of contact improvisation practitioners and teachers worldwide. A dancer, teacher, choreographer, and dance theorist, Nita received her PhD in performance studies in 2014. She now returns to international touring, invited by dance companies, festivals, conferences, and universities to teach, lecture, and compose emergent events. Her writing investigates ecological actions of attention and the creative potential present in entangled relations. She directs an international network of dance research ensembles, the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication, the ISSC, which has remained in suspension with the pandemic, but will return to practice very soon. And now, Nita, thank you for being here. Nita came all the way from the US, and this is the end of her Europe tour. So, welcome.
Hello, I'm live. I have a presentation to give you, and I didn't want to stand at the lectern. I wanted it to be far more personal because I'm a much better talker than I am a writer. And I really don't like it when I end up reading to people, writing that I've done. And so I'm going to be coming and going, intending this to be quite informal, but also intending for it to be precise. And I may follow this. I jump around as well. Originally, I intended to have my laptop there. How I'm doing this has changed given the circumstances. So I'm an improviser. I'm going to see how it goes. This talk is called Dead or Alive, an Argument for Embodied Imagination and Why It Matters. And tomorrow, my workshop is going to be on how. But before we begin, let me say something about having spent 50 years doing contact improvisation. And that has, I'm originally a contemporary dancer, and doing contact improvisation has made it a lifetime of being in relations with people and with spaces, objects, environments of all sorts. And that's pretty much what this is about. Before we begin, I'd like to say that I'm a practitioner even though I have a PhD, I'm much more of a practitioner. And it's from my practice that I speak to you. I will be quoting people. It's been an amazing journey preparing for this talk, because my world, being a relational world, speaks to me constantly. And materials show up, far more material showed up for this talk than I could possibly pass on to you. It's a very generous world I live in. I want to thank Joe Dumit and Sylvia Cardarelli-Granau, whose visuals I've used. Joe Dumit was my lead professor. He's now a very, very close friend. Minu, thank you for this opportunity, and art.earth. And I'd really like to thank the ISSC and members of that organization that I founded in 2016. But it's alive in so many ways. So here we go. I found this. I thought it was an interesting quote. It was in a text on education, and it speaks to one of the things that I think is important. These are the topics I hope I end up talking to you about. There's a whole bunch of them. Some of this language I've spent years developing. Some of it is just going to appear. And some of it I probably won't get to. If there's anything that I'm going to just leave this up so you can kind of peruse it while I talk. There's anything that I want you to know that I want you to get from this talk, it's that embodiment is political. And that means, and I'm going to have to be flipping my glasses here. That means that when you're not touching others, other beings, other things, other spaces, you're missing something. Okay, now we're going to have fun. I'd like to do a body-mind score with you. Here's the score. You don't have to read it. Oh, how you embody. I'm already slow. This is the score. Okay, but you don't have to read it. Am I on? Okay, so hand on your heart. Moving inside, connecting with yourself. That's right. Notice as you do this that you reach inward. This action is important. Now comes the impossible part. For me, not you. Now I do it this way. Bring your hands together about this. And I'd like you to have, can you still hear me? Have one hand reach for the other hand. That's right. There. Don't touch. Don't go all the way into touch. Just reach. And change hands so they're both reaching simultaneously. It's fine. And you notice that there's something about the space that compresses. I do not call this energy because energy is too amorphous a word. Doesn't adequately describe what I'm experiencing. So as you're reaching one hand towards the other, you can feel that the space of attention between those hands has a thickness to it, huh? There's something kind of thick. Maybe you feel warmth. I don't know what else you feel. I'd like you to do that to other parts of your body. Go ahead, wake up. Wake yourself up. Take your time. It is that reach of attention. I'd like you to notice it's physical. Keep the reach about touch. It's a touching attention. Could almost make you want to dance. That's right. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. That's right. Now, ask your partner or somebody near you, if you can touch their shoulder. So ask for permission. May I touch your shoulder? And when you touch your partner's shoulder, I'd like you to touch their shoulder with the same depth of intention, the same depth of attention that you touched your own heart. So go all the way in. This is not spatial, this is tactile, on the skin, in the shoulder, reaching the way you reached inside your heart. And if you want to, you can give a little bit of weight into that reach, feeling your partner rise a little bit, not force. Make sure you're not giving force. You're only giving weight. Just the barest, like 0.5% of your body weight, 0.25% of your body weight, so that you're deep inside your partner. Now we ask the people who are being touched, I'd like you to wiggle in your seat, wiggle in your chair the way you would if you were a kid, your legs, your hips. That's right, just wiggle. And notice, the person who's touching notices that you can feel all the way to the chair. You're feeling the chair underneath that person's body. All the way. You feel the wiggle, but you can feel all the way to the chair. Now, let's stop. Now imagine that the chair wiggled. If the chair wiggled, you'd feel it, wouldn't you? Yeah? You'd be feeling the chair wiggle. Right through your partner. Now let's imagine the floor wiggles. Not the chair, but the chair will also be moved by the floor. You can feel that right through your partner. Go all the way to the foundation of the building. Reach that far. Reach, that's a reach. Reach all the way. The foundation wiggles. You feel it. Now the earth wiggles. And you can feel that too. Look how far your reach is. That's a huge reach. That's how far you're reaching right now. It's tactile. You're taking touch with you. Change roles. Okay, great. Let's do it again. Remember, you can give just a tiny bit of weight if you want to. It might anchor that relationship, that touch, but it's not necessary. So your partner wiggles on the level of the pelvis and the feet. The shoulders don't have to wiggle, but you can feel it. You can feel the chair, even where the chair that doesn't wiggle. Right. And now you can stop and imagine the chair wiggles. You're sending your imagination into the chair, imagining it wiggles right through your partner. If you happen to be the partner, I want you to notice. You might be able to even feel that same thickness of attention that is in your body right now. It's in you. It's reaching through you into the chair. Now imagine the floor beneath the chair moves. And imagine the foundation of the building moves, wiggles. And imagine that the earth wiggles and you're feeling all the way through your partner because your reach is that far. Okay, I think we're ready. You might want to, just for a second, open your arms and let your reach be that far. Go further, further, further. Notice it's not hard. It's not the look of a reach. It's the action of reaching. It's attention. You can reach such extraordinary distances. That's right. It's tactile. It's attentional. It's imagine. You can't do it without imagining you can do it. Perfect. Let's go. You can't do this unless you imagine it. Imagination precedes embodiment. You all just, those of you who participated, just allowed yourself to engage in an embodiment that doesn't stop at surfaces, doesn't stop just with reasonable touch. It goes further. You're engaged in tactile attention. You can change your shape and size that way. So the touch of embodiment, and here I am getting myself set up again. A little awkwardly now that I have this. And so if you will bear with me as I go. Something I'd like to point out about what we just did, a few things I want to point out. I'd like to point out that the visual world is very often what I would call 2D. It touches surfaces. As you look at the world, you touch surfaces. You feel, you see, you understand surfaces. In terms of relations, it's very slow compared to touch, which I would call 3D, which is very, very fast. Its level of responsivity is instant. In fact, when you were touching your partner, if the floor moved, your partner would know that the floor moved in the same instant that you know, not later than. It's not relational in terms of responsive. It's not a responsive state. It's a communicative. You are in communion with your partner. Touch brings us together. And the other thing I want you to notice is that you were co-presencing. You were touching one another where your partner's body was, you were. You were, in fact, engaged through the structures of your partner. Present through those structures. That's what I call co-presencing. There's it's an extraordinary state to me to be in the same place with a partner. And I also want you to notice reaching, how important that reach is, that somatic reach. It's a form of soma that exceeds the flesh form, the skin sac. It is an attentional form, a somatic form of attention. So that when I touch, when I reach as touch, that which is Nita gets larger. And I have the choice of identifying only with my skin sac or identifying with my attentional reach, my physical attention. When I do that, I live in different worlds than the world that I was raised in, than the world I was domesticated to. Okay. Questions so far? So imagination precedes embodiment. What you think is possible becomes your reality. So if I think touch begins and ends at my flesh, I'm probably going to live that. I organize my perceptual expectations. And I think we all do that differently. I want to quote Adrienne Marie Brown. I'm moving on. I'm becoming more political right now. We have been growing otherness, borders, separateness. And in all that division, we have created layer upon layer of trauma and vengefulness, conditions for permanent war, practices that move us into battle with the very planet we rely on for life. The scale of division, conflict, racism, xenophobia, and hierarchical supremacy on our planet is overwhelming. Finding the places of healing and transformation, our purpose here is to find the places of healing and transformation. Being is relational. There's no being that is not relational. No action, no thought, no movement, no nothing. Right now, we're all in relational well, we're not all in relational practices, but we're all in relations with something, a thought, me, I'm with you. Take a moment, if you will, right now to just notice. What are you in relations with? Your clothing? Something on your face that is bothering you? An itch? The seat of the chair? The person next to you? you know, I'm talking to dancers. You are, this is such a rarefied audience. I feel like I'm speaking to the choir, you know, because you know so much, your bodies know so much, and your hearts are so intelligent. So forgive me if I say things that are so easy for you to grasp. It has taken a while to work out some of the particulars here, though. What got me where I am is to understand that presence is a disturbance. That, and I define disturbance as in the way of physics, not as a kind of social issue, interpersonal issue. The disturbance that presence is like a leaf falling from a tree and falling onto a pond. And it, the pond water is moved, the leaf itself is moved. When I consider that presence is a disturbance, I know that every moment I'm disturbing something. You know, whether it's vital and moving, or whether it is a table not moving, it's a disturbance of some order. The world has changed because it exists. Where my attention goes as embodiment, and my attention is a disturbance. And when I take it to that level, I understand that thoughts change presence, change my embodiment, and change what it is I bring to the disturbance of my presence. And it's physical, and it's that very physicality that I really love. It makes dancing possible. All of us who dance, we know, we feel how we play with that presence that we are. My dissertation is articulating presence, creative actions of attention in contemporary dance, creative actions of embodied attention in contemporary dance. Because the slightest shift of my attentional, this is a little tricky. I'm sorry that I'm kind of coming and going, waving this thing around, but I'm a dancer. I don't hold still, and I'm having a hard time holding still for you. I'm much better when I can wiggle and move. So this ability to articulate as a physical being is delicious, and it makes it easy to understand the disturbance of my presence. Understanding how this works in everyday life is one of the things that I think is important right now. I'm going to hop along here. And say, we have domesticated our attention and our embodiment. And that is in part because of this. divide and conquer as a political tool for managing people, for managing power. It's a fabulous tool. Convincing people that they are their flesh only works in being able to control groups of people. And the I'm looking at Minu right now. Minu, am I cool still? Okay. She's going to give me the eye when it's time. The colonizers very often have separated and individuated people as a tool for managing them. I was teaching up in Montreal, and a beautiful Native American dancer from a First Nation tribe, and maybe she's next. I think she is. Yes. Ivani Aubin Malo from the Wolastok tribe was teaching us the shawl dance. And she said, my people used to dance in circles. They're doing it again now, but when they were initially colonized, the Canadian government, as did the US government, took away permission to dance in circles, to dance, for dancers to work together, moving as one mind, because moving bodies, moving attention is unstable. The person who is in an extended form is not nearly as controllable. Not that the government understood that, but they understood that when people start to move as one mind, they're less controllable. But here's the interesting thing. They didn't say, you can't dance. What they did was they said, you can dance as an individual. You can dance as one. Somebody can dance in the middle of the circle. You know, somebody can do spectacle. You can watch someone be magnificent, but you can't be that all together. Interestingly, there's a writer right now, a theorist in Native American studies up in Canada, and I'm going to skip ahead and find what she has to say. What's interesting about her last name is Simpson, and she's in my bibliography. What's interesting about her is that she is asking, she says that the government took away permission to touch the earth. When you take away people's ability to move together, they were individuated them. They took also their children and trained them to sit in chairs and read, rather than understand history through a book, rather than through a dance, rather than through the peoples. And when that happened, the peoples were no longer touching the earth. And so her radical action is to bring the people back to touch the earth. That's an embodied state. That's an embodied state that is not bound by the flesh. It takes imagination to think differently. We can't do this work without imagining other possibilities. And when imagination precedes embodiment, you can't do it as something extra on top of being a skin sack. You have to get it before that happens. So it's really interesting. I do not in any way think that physical attention is the only way of embodying differently and uniquely. I think that there are many, many ways that imagination embodies us uniquely and differently in ways that teach us new forms, new understanding, new ways of being. I've myself had unique embodiments that are in excess of the one I was taught as a child when I was sitting in school. In my family, as I was taught to stay, to not get out of hand, which I love, get out of hand. Okay, let's do that thing. Okay, then, yeah. There's some beautiful writing about Native American, the Native American ways that speaks to me, praying through bodily movement and ritual practice rather than through sitting, reading, believing, threaten colonizers' notions of how spirituality is manifested. Ceremonies that included elaborate feasts and gifting threatened ideologies of private practice and individual ownership. Definitions of what constitutes work and what productive activity might include, and the value of productivity itself. Okay. Adrienne Marie Brown again. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the imagination more and embodiment, about what it is to be individualized. I'm an American, and boy, oh boy, Americans believe in individuation. We believe in the individual. And we glorify that. But of course, the individual, when I'm individualized, and it's important to know, I think it's important to be able to be an individual. I'm really not saying that's the only root problem here, but it is the embodiment that does not change, does not have flexibility, is a problem. Because when you start to do the practice that we just did, you notice that you have the possibility of becoming a multiplicity of beings. When you co-presence, you're not just an individual anymore. When you get into somatic practices and you start to experience various parts of your body and the life that is lived within, you realize you're a multiplicity of being. And that multiplicity is within you and without you. And that instability of your being makes you ungraspable, unable to be easily manipulated. It allows you to have a diversity of being, to realize that diversity is a value, a positive value that we only gain with our diversity. I want to go into psychology and think about that person who begins in an undifferentiated state and then eventually learns to individuate from his, her mom, their mom, and becomes an individual being. And then that being, and if we think about Martin Buber and we think about how it is that we start to gain relations, I-it relations, I-thou relations. I want to talk about that which we did earlier when we were touching someone's shoulder, and that I've been suggesting as a one action of the imagination, that exceeds an I, thou, it exceeds a we. We no longer want to say we, you and I, the individuals, you and I, are doing something. We want to say that we now are an extended we. We're not singular we's coming together. We're this new otherwise form. And the potentials of that form require an embodiment that can imagine more. We are imaginative beings. We invent worlds all the time. Adrienne Marie Brown says, it is so important that we fight for the future. I'm going to read it here. That we get into the game, get dirty, get experimental. How do we create proliferate a compelling vision of economies and ecologies that center humans and the natural world over the accumulation of material? We embody, we learn, we release the idea of failure because it's all data. But first we imagine. We are in an imagination battle. When I found this in preparing for this lecture, I went, yes, here we are. This is, if you haven't read her book, Emergent Strategies, it's quite a lovely book to come to new understandings of generous ways of being. She's a Black woman in America rethinking how to be together, how we can be together. And this is what she's come to. James Hillman says, the imagination lives in the heart. I hope we have, there he is. Yeah. With the heart, we move at once into imagination. For when the brain is considered to be the seat of consciousness, we search for literal locations, whereas we cannot take the heart with the same physiological literalism. James Hillman, whose work was very much about the heart, and it's interesting, when COVID hit, the first thing I started doing in classes was touching, reaching into the heart. to find the way to help people and help myself get through this time, to reach inside, to hear and feel that particular wisdom, and to allow my heart the freedom to speak to me. So the ISSC, in 2016, I started this Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication because I was interested in how is it that touch teaches us so much, and what is there. And the first thing that I do when I'm working with an ensemble is ask them to learn to move at the speed of their attention. I do this in contact classes as well. Move at the speed of your attention, because until you do, you can't experience. You're thinking ahead about moves, and you haven't learned. You can't learn what's actually happening right now. So along with that, I usually do something nasty, like say, if you know what you're going to do in the next moment, don't do it. And that forces people to once again be moving at the speed of their attention. And as they gain skill, I ask them to learn to move at the speed of their partner's attention. How do you know what if your partner's in attention? Did any of you feel your partner's attention in your body when they touched you? Could you feel that? When you're touching someone, you can feel the actions of their attention. You can feel if they are inside, if they're moving toward you within that really interesting, subtle thickening. But there's more, and there's so much more that I can't even tell you how this happens. But it happens, and things change. And it's that change that is phenomenal. I was so during COVID, the ISSC, these different ensembles, we have ensembles in Germany, and in one's was just about to happen in Italy, in Denmark, in the UK, in France, in I don't know, there were 7, 8 places that we have ensembles. We call them collaboratories. And I set up a virtual collaboratory because none of the collabs could meet. So the first project we had was to study all together, moving at the speed of our attention, and people did this individually. And we met over 6 weeks, and we wrote and we talked about it. And one of my buddies, Kevin O'Connor, whose work is with fascia, and that's fascinating. I would so love to talk to you about the fascia and the intelligence that's present there, and talk about the distribution of intelligence as what I call peripheral intelligence, how the body can move so fast through touch, through that intelligence that is in the smallest parts of ourselves. But here we are. Kevin O'Connor was up in the Northwoods of Canada, and he was doing the collab, and he had this amazing experience one night walking home through the woods, trying to get home fast because it was getting dark. This was October. It was getting dark early, and he had a pain in the knees. So he thought to invite more parts of his body to distribute that whatever was going on in the knee all the way up to the shoulder. And then he created a score because it was helping. And I'm looking for my Kevin O'Connor. Give me a second here. Great. Okay, Kevin, you're not here. I'll tell you the story. So here he is. I was walking fairly quickly. There are animals in the woods, and I wanted to get home to the cabin before it was totally dark. So that was where he was starting. I was attending to the speed and the redistribution of pressure in ways that made my walk feel new and created a gooey architecture that felt dynamic and plastic, meaning changeable. Gooey architecture, when Kevin speaks, about that, he's talking about the fascia. Was it just the change in my attention that shifted the pain? Here's a score he created. Unhook from my central intelligence and into my gooey body. Feel this goo as a dynamic, morphing architecture that shapes and responds to movement and surrounds every muscle fiber, bone, ligament, cell at every scale. Attend to pain, where in particular exercise is the pressure coming into the body, concentrating and possibly leading to pain. Play with your gooey body, redistributing the pressure coming in through different pathways. Because it was getting dark, I started to become aware of the possibility of tripping and possibly spraining an ankle, as well as the possibility of running into a deer, moose, wolf, or deer at any number of animals in the woods. I decided to play with Nita's response to my beaver attention reflection, where she wrote, "Is there a gooey body that would be co-presencing in the space of the beaver?" I asked, is there a gooey body that could be co-presencing as trail forest animals? I noticed from my gooey body, I extended to the trail. It wasn't a visual feeling, it was too dark, but lost page 10, and we're in the excitement of this. Wrong one, here it goes. But it was a felt sense of allowing my gooey body to extend its leading edge around 5 meters in all directions around me. I noticed in doing so, I could increase my walk and my speed of attention could keep up. The bumps and unevenness of the trail were easier to navigate by the goo, meaning the goo as a relational pathway had the ability to distribute pressure coming in and fall and catch itself as needed as a kind of dynamic pressure distributing architecture. In co-presencing, I could not tell if the goo was feeling the grooves of the land before my weight met the physical trail, if the goo was becoming with the trail or something else. More research needed to find the right language. What was important was I could increase the speed of my walk and increase the speed of my attention with ease. I did also notice that I could track far more disturbances in the woods. This actually made me a bit nervous because I could feel the disturbances of animals and plants quite close. This was slightly spooky. I didn't want one of the disturbances to be a wolf or bear. Yeah, imagination. It's critical to what we're doing. We are imaginative beings. We invent worlds all the time. One of the key things we use to imagine is to ask, what if? What Kevin just did was a what if. And what if is interesting because it is the kind of the basis of all anxiety. We're asking what if, and then it freaks us out. but it all is also the basis of extraordinary creativity. What happens if we identify selfhood with our attentional form and not our skin sac? Avanoi. Human beings are organized by habit and biology. Choreography and other art practices afford us the opportunity to reorganize ourselves. In this way, biology and culture get entangled. In this, art shapes life, and life, for its part, is made new by art. I don't think I have to say anything more about that. He did, by the way. That was his introduction to a talk he gave. And then, if you don't know Bayo Akamolafe, wonderful theorist. Shape-shifting is not some magical, imaginative, lazy idea of becoming a bug. Now, I want you to note that that imagination was put in the negative here. But I know it's not a negative for him. Or growing horns. It's noticing that all bodies are practices. Bodies are stabilized within practices, not still. More than human practices. We need new practices that are careful to not be reiterating. This is me grasping bits of a talk he gave. Shape-shifting is about new practices. We need to be careful to not reiterate problematic events of modernity. Yeah, you'll find him. This was in a talk he gave called Shape-Shifting. What does it mean to be healthy at the end of the world? Yeah. And here is my bibliography. One of the things I didn't talk about that I think is important to consider is the difference between imagination and fantasy. Bayo Akamolafe said imagination, but it's really fantasy that is problematic. It's fantasy that is political and utilized to manage people. It's fantasy that says we're different. It's fantasy that says we're different in particular ways. The skin color, for instance, says something about our intelligence or whatever. You know, we use fantasy to create fear. Imagination does a completely different thing. I was in a conversation with Joe Dumont, and he was really amazing in articulating that. So I've been working and struggling with the difference between imagination and fantasy, because when I got my PhD, my lead professor really hated me saying that every moment imagination is present in every moment. The issue is that we just keep reimagining the same body, the same embodiment over and over and over again. That is our domestication as cultural beings. We don't have to do that. Okay. I think I have pretty much come to it. That's part I'm going on. It's a long bibliography, and it doesn't even come close to all that I read. There's things up there I wish were there. I didn't put in Thich Nhat Hanh, who has this term interbeing that has spoken to me so greatly. Being Peace is a book worth reading. I didn't speak about So Hum, and the founder of You Are, Therefore I Am. What's his, I want to say Satish Kumar. Is that right? Am I saying his name properly? Yeah. What a beautiful book. Absolutely understanding the embodiment that we've been playing with. This, so gentle and so I am just at the beginning of this understanding as a physical being on the level of my physicality. We can't do it with our heads. It has to be in the body. And somebody stop me. We're ready for questions. Thank you. Okay, I'm holding this and you've got one? Okay. So we're going to take questions.
Okay.
If anyone has them.
So how we do it is I'm going to listen to your question. I'm going to speak it in here so that our online audience hears.
What the effects of technological communication would be. Or what they are. I think that the body of that is embodiment is extraordinarily flexible. You can be in one body in one instant and in another in the next. So I'm not interested in stability or fixed embodiments. So in that sense, the embodiment that I am in when I'm speaking through Zoom can be different than the embodiment I am in when I'm dancing. Understanding what those embodiments do is important. Did I answer that? Do you, yeah, that question? Okay. You know, Spinoza has a thing. Spinoza said, we don't know what a body can do. And we, in this era, I would say, we don't know what a body mind, no, he said, we don't know what a body mind can be or do. We don't know what a body can do. We don't know what a body mind can do. What a human being can be. My work is all about rethinking what a human can be. And technology is with us. I am very afraid of replacing body parts before we even know what they can do. Replacing bodies before, and amplifying technology, which is kind of a flat universe, when we don't know, when we have not really worked this form, which is an extraordinary form. I've had extraordinary experiences because I've got a very light touch with my embodiment. I mean, not that I'm solid, not that I'm light in my personhood. But I identify selfhood with my attention. And I am creative.
Thanks,
So,
Nita.
yeah. Anybody else? Question?
Do you mind repeat? Do you mind
It's working.
repeating
Yours is working.
everything?
Why don't you go ahead and you select people, please?
Yeah.
So, shall I? I think trauma inhibits. Trauma is one of the tragedies of this moment. One of the tragedies of individuation is that we have been traumatizing one another. And it inhibits our ability to act as free beings. The technologies that are coming up to help people get through trauma are critical. But we also have to be thinking, what is it that a body that is not traumatized can be? A human can be. What can we be as a world? You know, I cannot move but for the world. My body reaches into the earth in order to move across the earth. That reach, same reach, body to walk, there's a reach there. There's a reach there. When I'm present to what I am, that makes a huge difference. It gives stability. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Emma, sister.
Yeah. I was advised not to because it makes people think that the job is to do something extraordinary. And that's not the job. The job is to do the ordinary and find that it's extraordinary. I will personally, if you ask me, if we in here, I will tell you at some point if you want to, but I don't want to distract from what we're really talking about here. Okay.
Nita, I'm going to repeat the question so that our online audience can hear. Can you repeat the question, Ross?
I definitely, yeah.
So the question is, has Nita seen, has worked with people with trauma before, and how have they responded to the way Nita works?
Touch is extraordinarily healing. If it's grounded, if it has earth in it, if I bring the earth through me to someone, it changes things. I'm not a healer. And I don't work with trauma physically. But I do know that people have taken class or been with me and found themselves supported through touch. I think touch, it's not just touch, it's also the imagination that travels as touch. Yeah. I do see it. I watch attention as body. I see people move. I'm watching their attention. That's what she's speaking about. No, that's too individual. I can't even, there's no, yeah. And I'm not researching trauma, quite frankly. So I'm not very good at answering that question, I'm afraid.
We have room for 2 more questions and then it's dinner time.
We keep repeating a limited embodiment, a very, very limited embodiment, which makes you controllable. Okay. Well, yes, absolutely. The embodiment over centuries has changed, even though it has remained individuated. It has changed tremendously. I mean, the history of why we live in an individuated body is really interesting. The whole thing about Descartes and how what Descartes was doing was healing science and the church, or dividing science and the church so each of them could have a realm of the body. And that has been repeated. It's repeated in lots of different forms. So, yeah.
The question was about the repetition of embodiment.
Yeah, I understand. And it's not that embodiment doesn't change, but that by increments. And I think it can do a lot more than that in a moment of crises, which we are in crises. Yeah.
One more question.
Okay, you're all hungry. Oh yeah, somebody up there at the top, and you'll be the last, yay? Yes, 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 that's true. Yeah, I absolutely, because fantasy is right there around the corner.
So the question was, how do you stay grounded when we are working in the imaginal realm and not take off?
Yeah. You start with the earth. It comes right through you. and you keep what you're working with organized around the senses, perception, auditory, hearing, and you allow for synesthesia. And you let yourself grow. As an embodied, when it's embodied, it's really different than when it's disembodied. When it's embodied, it's not scary in the same sense. Just not scary because it makes sense, because it's embodied, it's understood. It's not as scary, put it on top. It's not imagination when it does not come, when it precedes embodiment. It's not put on top of an already organized body. When it's on top of an already organized body, it can be scary because it's not earth connected. If it's embodied, there's earth in it. Yes, that could be. I've got to do more work there too. Yeah, I'm working hard. I have ideas, but you know, I'm not an expert. I'm just expert at research. You know, I'm just expert at play and at being precise in what I'm asking and how I'm talking about what it is I think is happening.
Nita, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Thanks,
your patience.
everyone. Thanks, Nita.
Thank you.
So, thanks, everyone. This was the beginning. And it's dinner time now.